Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. So if y'all don't know, Wind Waker Unflooded is a 3D modeling project where I've been reimagining the world of Hyrule as it could have existed within the world and art style of The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. And of course, just like one of the guiding factors of my map as I've been modeling it has just been the idea that this is a prologue to The Wind Waker. This is as Hyrule would have looked right before the Great Flood. And something I've wanted to do with the project, I think I've said this in my videos already, is that somewhere it could go in the future now that I have a map is I could make animated shorts after the map's done, telling the story of how the Great Flood happened, how Ganondorf returned, how the kingdom responded, and why a flood was the only way to wash away Ganondorf. It's this really dramatic story, I think, about the fall of this kingdom. It would be very apocalyptic, and you could get a lot into the politics of the world and the drama, right? Of this era's Zelda, her father, who could be King Daphne's No Hands in Hyrule, and how they deal with Ganondorf's return in a world without a hero. Because, of course, as you know from the prologue of The Wind Waker, a hero does not appear. Ocarina of Time's Link was sent back in time, and this is a world where there is no Link. And so that's part of why it's impossible to stop Ganon and why a flood seems like the only option. But there's some other story ideas I have as well. I just kind of want to walk you through a little bit of my outline. Of course, like if you want to be spoiler free for what these shorts become, then don't watch this video. But if you're interested in just some of my story ideas that I have right now, and I'm sure a lot will change too as I get feedback from other contributors and from y'all watching this video. But I wanted to just go ahead and kind of get your thoughts on the story as I saw it so I could share it with you and kind of make this a collaborative experience. I think I've always enjoyed that Wind Waker Unflooded as a YouTube channel has been just incredibly community-driven. I really respect y'all's feedback, and that directly affects the way that I work on this fan project. So I want to carry that over into these animated shorts. So just the concept is, these are a series of animated shorts within the world of Wind Waker Unflooded, which is a prologue to the events of The Wind Waker, styled as in-game cutscenes, featuring original music and possible voiceover. I'm not sold on there being voiceover, maybe for specific episodes. I just think that's something that could benefit certain episodes. But let's kind of, here's the outline. Just here's the whole outline. So the idea is each episode would be relatively short, just a couple minutes long at a time. So you're really getting these micro stories in the style of something like that 2003 Clone Wars TV show where each episode was only a couple minutes, but you put it all together and it's this continuous story. And so that's just kind of the idea that I have. That'll be challenging, and I'm so used to writing short films that are like 30 minutes long, 20 minutes long, even 15 minutes. And so just keeping it under 5 pages, I think that would be rewarding just for efficiency and just to make sure that I'm really focusing on the best parts of it. I'm not lingering on something that doesn't matter. But yeah, the story is essentially the downfall of Hyrule in the lead up to Ganon's return and the Great Flood. Of course, y'all know the prologue of The Wind Waker. Y'all know how that goes, and this is basically fleshing out those tapestries, right? And showing the tapestries as in-game cutscenes, essentially. Bringing characters into them, really making that cinematic and dramatic. So let's talk about just some of the ideas I would be splitting them up between seasons, just groups of episodes. So Season 1 would be the lead up to the declaration of war between Hyrule and the Gerudo. Season 2 would be the lead up to Ganondorf's return, and Season 3 would be leading up to the Great Flood. So this is when there's all-out war, right? So Season 1 and 2, Ganondorf is kind of working in the shadows. He hasn't, maybe even fully been resurrected yet. And so that's kind of the idea, right? Season 1, it's more of his cult working behind the scenes in the shadows. Season 2 is Ganondorf himself. He's returned, and he eventually reveals himself. And then Season 3, it's all-out war. Hyrule is, of course, from the events of the game, if you played The Wind Waker, Ganon's forces invade Hyrule Castle. The world is flooded. And so those are the main arcs. And so there's some ideas I have within that I just kind of want to get into. So first off, I think it would be really cool to show that this is a world where the Ocarina of Time was left behind in the adult timeline, right? So let's say that Gerudo militants kidnap Zelda and demand the Ocarina of Time as payment for her return. Now, I don't really want to do the damsel in distress stuff with Zelda, and really throughout the story, I really want her to be one of the main heroes of the story. This is a world without a Link, right? So I think it makes sense for Zelda to be one of the main heroes a lot of the time, and there's a lot of ideas I have with that don't really aren't really on paper in this outline, but there's a lot of stuff I want to do with her really spearheading this movement against Ganon. In a world without Link, there is no Link. I think it would be really cool to really let her, step up and take the reins in a world without Link, really trying to take on Ganon herself. And there's a lot of ideas I have with that. Before I keep talking about this any further, though, I think it's time for a short message. So I will talk to all of you again after the break. See you then. If you want to be able to support me as a creator, there are several ways that you can make possible the creation of everything that I do. Become a Patreon member. I post all kinds of exclusive content that you can only see first on Patreon. Stuff like behind-the-scenes content for my filmmaking projects, whether that's in-progress scripts, storyboards, rough cuts, anything for my newest films that aren't posted anywhere else besides Patreon. So become a member. There's a whole range of prices, and you can support me even in small ways. That's super meaningful. Supporting me on Patreon too gets you in the credits list of any film that I release while you're a member. And like I said, even a little goes a long way. You can also collaborate with me now through Fiverr. I offer a range of services that could help bring your project to life. And if you've heard any music in the background of this video, that was my music. So feel free to look me up on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to music. Type in Joe Kendrick. That's JoeKendrick. Look up Joe Kendrick on Spotify. Supporting me is super meaningful. I don't make any ad revenue on Wind Waker Unflooded. If you see an ad on the video, it's because YouTube is putting ads on their videos. I'm not making any ad revenue from this project. It's completely not monetized for me. So if you want to be able to support me as a creator, any way that you can do that means a lot, and it goes towards the creation of all that I do. So thank you to everyone who's supported me along the way. The sage Fado plants trees in the desert, hoping to ease tensions with the Gerudo. That's really like one of the main themes, right? Are this tension with the Gerudo people. You think about Ganondorf's final speech at the end of Wind Waker, how he's so frustrated that the Kingdom of Hyrule was this green land, that was prosperous and it was beautiful, while the Gerudo Desert was arid and it was hard and it was deadly, right? And so just like maybe that's something that I think about the Deku Tree in the Wind Waker. One of his goals with the Koroks was this kind of environmentalist idea that he wanted to fix this dystopian world, the ecology of the world, and terraform it with that in mind, with trying to restore it to its former self. And in the Wind Waker, the Deku Tree was trying to plant forests across the Great Sea. And maybe that's something that we could see even in this prelude to the Wind Waker. I think it would be the same Deku Tree, just a little bit younger. Who knows how? I imagine that the Deku Trees live for hundreds of years. So I think it would be really cool to see that even in that time, that's one of his solutions, that in this world where there's a disparity, where there's a divide of poverty, right, between the haves and the have-nots, and that's something that we see in the environment, he would be trying to fix that by restoring the desert to a forest. And we know, of course, throughout Hyrule's history, that the Gerudo Desert region used to be an ocean. And so already, we know that was a prosperous forested land back in the day. And so I think, it's not without reason that the Deku Tree could be trying to restore it. And, of course, that would give us a way to see the Sage Fado himself, who we see as a ghost in the Wind Waker. And so he would be one of the current characters of the story. Really, a lot of the main characters that I want to show, are people that we know of from Wind Waker, right? Of course, the royal family, the attendants, we see that in a painting in Hyrule Castle. We see all the attendants, which, of course, are the ancestors to Tetra's pirate gang, which I love that, and I'd love to show them, the king, Zelda, really focus on them, focus on the sages of the time, which we know a couple. We know Fado, like I said, the Sage of Wind, and we would know Laruto, who is the Sage of Earth. And, of course, I have ideas for other sages, which would be invented for the purposes of this story. But those would be a lot of the main characters. And, of course, the Risen Ganondorf is a main character as well. But I really want to follow, because I know people talk about Zelda, the history of Zelda, a lot in terms of reincarnation, this idea that this is the current incarnation of Zelda and Link and Ganon. But really, in many ways, it is a history of families. And that's something I want to tackle here. This is the royal family and its lineage, right, for instance. There's the Gerudo lineage and its royal family's lineage, which, of course, leads to, Ganondorf's resurrection. For instance, there's other characters which I want to see their history, and we see the Kokiri, which become the Koroks. And that's a lineage, right? It's not just reincarnation. And I really don't think it is reincarnation when we talk about that throughout the series, and we talk about the spirit of the hero. And different, of course, different Zelda games handle Link differently. Sometimes Link is a blood descendant of previous Links, like we know of like Ocarina of Time to Twilight Princess. We know that that's a blood relative. But in Wind Waker, it's revealed that the Hero of Winds has no blood relation or connection to the Hero of Time. So different games approach that differently. Link does not have to be a blood relative. And so to that end, the current Link of the Age, may not be a family member. And that can be part of the themes of the story. It can be someone completely new. But a lot of Zelda is this history of different families, especially the royal family, more than anything else. So, anyway, the Lightning Sage attempts to unify the Gerudo as a tribe, assimilating the thieves and extremists. I think that would be really interesting to get into, right? The Gerudo are, in Ocarina of Time, all we see is this thieves' hideout, right? The Gerudo Fortress. And I love the idea that that's only one side of them, right? And that they may have this rich culture as well. And I think it'd be really cool to kind of tell the story of, there's this kind of shame in that, they're known as a tribe of thieves, but they're more than that. They have a much richer culture. And I'd love to show, a version of Gerudo Town like it is in Breath of the Wild, with similar architecture, showing that there's just this is a people group with rich culture, and just there's this I don't know. I think they would just have a really interesting relationship to their thieves, right? And I think that the Sage of Lightning, kind of in this prologue to the Wind Waker, would have a really interesting story here, and you could kind of tell different stories with different sages, as they are really all representatives of their tribes, right? And so they have different relationships to their people and to the royal family and to Ganondorf. And I think the Gerudo would be in a really interesting position because, of course, there's still things that need to be fixed. There would still be disparity and poverty, and there would be issues, right? And there would be border disputes, and there would just be reasons that some of the Gerudo would be still loyalists to Ganondorf, and some of them were willing to move on past Ganondorf and put that behind them. But then some of them would say, no, we need another king, right? There would be these kind of messianic prophecies, if you will, right? There would still be that desire for a new Ganondorf to either the old one to return and save them, or for a new king to rise up. That would be something they would want, and I think that would be really interesting to kind of get into that. A sect of Sheikah, possibly the Yiga. I don't want to necessarily say the word Yiga just because I'm not sure if that fits timeline-wise. If we really want to say that Breath of the Wild is the conglomeration of all three timelines, I'm okay with saying the Yiga originated all the way back then. I've kind of had the idea that the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, that they are the future of the adult, not the adult, like the child and downfall timelines, but not the adult timeline. That said, there's a lot of things that carry over, and I think, if the prevailing theory is that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are the combination of all three timelines, I'm okay with setting up some stuff in this timeline as well. And of course, there's other things that I'd want to carry over, and there's other things I am borrowing from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, geographically, for instance, because of course it's the same version of Hyrule. It's the same kingdom, it's the same land, it's the same continent. I think it makes sense to borrow from its geography and its landmarks. But there's just certain lore things and names that I want to be careful of using. But it could be the Yiga. They would ally with Gerudo extremists and assassinate the queen. I think that would be a major turning point in the King of Hyrule and how he wants to, that's just the kind of kingdom he wants to lead, right? Because I think part of the story is a story of hubris. It's the story of Hyrule will inevitably fall, not just because it's taken over, but because of its own pride and hubris. I'm really interested in telling that story. So let's talk about some of the ideas for Season 2 leading up to Ganondorf's return. So in the wake of the Queen's assassination, the king has the Knights of Hyrule established. Famous Knights of Hyrule, mentioned only in a couple games. I think it'd be really interesting to show them. And of course, I have some ideas of what they turn into. But anyway, Sheikah archaeologists discover a kind of divine beast, a giant mechanical boar. This would be something they would discover, maybe underneath Hyrule Field. I have some ideas of where to go with this. So this is just kind of setting up the finale that I have in mind. Maybe the origins of Puppet Ganon, if you will. The Zora also discover massive dams at the edge of the kingdom, somehow keeping a giant ocean at bay. This is kind of maybe my biggest lore stretch to date, but I think it would be really dramatic and powerful, is to have, of course the ocean would go off into the distance, maybe into the horizon at the edge of the kingdom, but past that horizon could be these giant dams, which is keeping the true ocean at bay, which I think would just be such a dramatic idea, that this flood going into the Wind Waker, that's not just global sea levels rising. What that is the ocean coming in to fill the basin of Hyrule. I've seen some other people in the comments of my videos also comment that they think that that's a valid theory for how the ocean came to be in Wind Waker, that Hyrule could have just been in a basin the whole time. And I think it would be really cool to show that there's, that their hubris is not just the way that they rule each other, just all of the issues that come with a monarchy, but it's also, it comes down to trying to dam the very ocean, right? That's that's an ultimate act of hubris, to have these giant walls trying to keep the ocean back. These could be an ancient structure, right? This could be long before this current version of the Kingdom of Hyrule, but something that they are just continuously doing is trying to dam the ocean. And I just think that that's a really powerful metaphor for the kingdom's pride, for its hubris, and the fact that their failures, are something that, could have been avoided. So anyway, Ganondorf reveals himself to Gerudo Apocalypticist gathered at Fado's Oasis. Right? I love that idea that Fado was trying to restore the desert in some way, protect it, and that's and that that effort to unify the kingdom becomes a haven for Ganondorf's loyalists, right? For these people that want that returning king, that want, that are so upset with Hyrule and want someone to come back and fight the Kingdom of Hyrule and take it over and make a Gerudo kingdom again, right? I think that that's really cool. So Ganondorf reveals himself to his followers, and then he takes on the army of Hyrule and transforms its knights into Dark Knights. I think that's really cool, right? Just the idea that, these Knights of Hyrule are established in the wake of the Queen's assassination, and they're this, kind of super class of knights, right? And they're what become the Dark Knights. I think that's been a common theory for who the Dark Knights are, where they came from. The idea that they're transformed knights. That's a theme throughout the series, like the mind-controlled knights in A Link to the Past. And I think just we know that the knights, or the Dark Knights of Wind Waker drop the Knights' crests. They are, lore-wise, different from the Iron Knuckles of past games and the Dark Knights of past games, right? These are knights transformed into monsters, and I think it would be really cool to show that within this story, to show how they came to be. They're not just armored monsters; they are transformed knights, and I think that's I think that's not a controversial theory, and so I'd like to just show that within this story. So the last group of episodes we'll call Season 3, leading up to the Great Flood itself. So the war divides the kingdom. Ganondorf, it's full-on war, right? The sages that were once unified turn against each other. Like I said before, I'd love to keep exploring that, how their relationships with their tribes impact their relationship to the kingdom itself and their relationship to Ganondorf. Who do they choose to ally with? And just all of these alliances and just kind of managing that. And there will be a lot of drama there, right? Because there's different reasons that different sages might turn against Hyrule in the end. And so that, Hyrule ends up destroying itself in the end. Right? So the divine beast in the form of a mechanical boar, a puppet Ganon, is turned against Hyrule. Zelda and her allies mount an attack on the machine and are able to shut it down. But it's too late. Castletown is destroyed. I love that idea of this giant mechanical beast, this puppet Ganon, is taking over and destroying Castletown. In my modeling project, I have this giant romanticized version of Castletown that we're working on. It's this lake town, this kind of beautiful city on the lake full of culture. And of course, it doesn't exist in the time of Wind Waker. I think because it was destroyed by Ganon's forces. We know within the lore of the Wind Waker that, basically right before the Great Flood, Ganondorf's forces had invaded the castle. When you return to the Frozen in Time version of Hyrule Castle in Wind Waker, you fight off Ganondorf's forces, all these moblins and Dark Knights, right? And so I really like the idea of, just kind of getting into his invasion. And part of that is the destruction of Castletown. We see Castletown in the prologue to the Wind Waker. So it's implied that there is a town that is destroyed. We see it destroyed in the prologue. Because, of course, there's multiple Castletowns. The prologue of the Wind Waker shows Ocarina of Time's Castletown in the first panel, and then shows, which is, of course, destroyed in the adult timeline. We see, that fight with Beast Ganon and Ocarina of Time and that Ring of Fire. And then we see the restored version of Castletown in the next panel. But then we, of course, see it in flames in the tapestry. So it's the tapestry sets up a lot of lore that we can tap into with the geography of this world and its relationship to Castletown. And so I'm excited just to show that. But anyway, so the Castletown's destroyed, and then Ganon's forces in their hubris take control of the dams at the kingdom's edge, hoping to generate power from the oceans. But as Ganondorf himself confronts the King of Hyrule and Princess Zelda in a tower atop Hyrule Castle, We're atop the new Ganon's Tower, which is just built. After his monsters have just breached the Hyrule Castle's walls, the dam bursts. They duel as the waters rise around them until the floodwaters wash them all away, though of course Zelda manages to escape. I'm not sure if the king does, because the king, as we see him in the Wind Waker, seems to just be a ghost, which I think is really cool. But yeah, I mean that's essentially the story. I mean there's some different things that I'm working on, which I'm sure will change. But I wanted to go ahead and just like share my outline with y'all, just in case y'all had your own thoughts. I wanted to see y'all's feedback on these different things, and just see, you know, like I've voiced that like I'm interested in doing these animated shorts within the world of this project before, but I just wanted to go ahead and share my ideas just to see where y'all are at, what y'all think, see what more y'all want to see. So comment down below y'all's ideas, what y'all think of the outline that I've shared with you, just to see where y'all are at. You know, it's not too spoilery, just because there's a lot of things that are just built upon things we know already from the original Wind Waker game and from the lore of Zelda already. So I don't feel like it's too spoilery to share this, just because, yeah, it's built upon pre-existing knowledge. But I do want to know what y'all think so that I can keep working on this outline, flesh out individual episodes. And yeah, I mean, just once again, thank you for your thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching. But without further ado, I'll let you go.